Welcome to my notes Oracle DB YouTube channel. Today we are going to discuss about blocking queries or blocking sessions. Before that, we are just contributing this video to our missile man since it is his anniversary. So we are just dedicating this video to our youth icon missile man Sir APJ Abdul Kalam. So let's move into our video. So first we have to understand what is a blocking transaction or like a blocking query. So whenever any client or any person is executing one query within that transaction mode, at the same time the another person is trying to update the same table, same row, since the first transaction is being in that queue, the second one also is waiting for to complete the first one. So due to that, it will create that waiting duration. So since that waiting duration will use more resources, so it may lead that increase of concurrent connections and CPU utilization. So it will cause the performance degrade as well. Let's take an example. In our table, we have a table name called sales. There is a product name called chair. So one of the transaction, which means one of the person is trying to update the sale date is 2023-07-23. Person is trying to update the same product with that different date of 2023-07-26. Then transaction has been waiting for that first transaction as to complete, since it is creating the block each other. So how to identify or how to get the details or long running queries and query details? There is a view name called PGStatActivity. So this PGStatActivity, what it will do, it will help us to understand what are the current transactions or current queries are running in our database. So through that we can understand of what is the query, what is the process ID of the query, then the query start timing and what kind of wait event and which process and what is the IP address. All the details we can get through this PGStatActivity view. Also, we can find that blocking queries, so that it is a joining of PG logs and PGStatActivity. In the session 1, I'm just seeing that what are the databases are available. Now I have connected my database name called my notes Oracle DBA. So once I have connected, I am just verifying the tables. So here we have the table name called sales. I'm just doing select asterisk from sales table. So we had the column of chair and sale date. Now I want to know this session, what is the backend ID, so which help us to understand that demo. So I will use this backend ID. So this session 1 backend ID was 26288. Now I am initiating a transaction begin. So update the sales table, set sale underscore date 2023-07-23, where the product underscore name equal to CHAIR. So as we know, once you have initiated the transaction, either the transaction has to complete by commit or rollback. So since this is a testing, what we have done, we have just initiated the transaction. Now I will go back to the another session 2. Here I will use the same database. I am trying to connect with the same DB. Now I just want to get that PID of this one. So PG underscore backend underscore PID. So this PID is 26312. So we have to remember our first one is 26288. The session of 2 backend ID is 26312. Now I am going to initiate that same table, one more transaction against the same sales table with the row of sale date. Now 2023 07 27 or 26 you can give, where product underscore name equals to CHAIR. So since the first transaction is being in that transaction, so that second transaction is not showing anything. So if you could see here, the next line item it was showing, but this transaction is still waiting. Now we have to understand with the third session. I will connect that session. Now I am just connecting with this backend ID. So this one is 26325. There is a view called all the ongoing transaction to view that pg underscore stat underscore activity. So it will provide all the current transaction, whatever it's going on. By default, you can see everything here. So for example, this record, we have like 7 records are there against this database. So you can just verify what are the things are there. So the first item is dat ID. Dat ID is like our database OID. So this is our database name and the PID of the process ID. And if you want to get that which username and application name, and if you want to get that which IP address it was executed, that one we can see. And there is one like when was that backend, so it was started, and all the details we can see that. Even that what is that wait event and wait event type, what is the current state of that particular query. So all the details we could see through that pgstat activity. Now what I will do, I want to see whatever that queries were executing currently active. So I will take that session not equal to idle. So once you have executed, we could see there are three queries were currently active, which one is like the session 1 we have initiated the transaction, and the session 2 we have trying to update that same value, that is the session 2. That session 3 that we are getting the details of pgstat activity. So you can just verify here. So you can see the process ID is 26312. So 26312 is our process ID. Then that query start is like, this is that query start time, and you can see that wait event type is log. So in that session 1 you can just scroll up this. So I want to give that. So this is the session 1. The session 1 process ID is 26288. So the same date ID you can see, because this will be like our database OID. So that OID is like generated by Postgres when you are creating the database. So this OID won't change. So since we are using the same database, so the database also same. The process ID you can see that, and what application, which means how you are connecting through the PSQL, and what is that client port. So since we are connecting it, so it was showing like a -1, and the query start time, that start time and state and what kind of client, and it will show like idle in transaction. That state of this one is idle in transaction. If you could see that client read and the client one. So that query details. So here the most of the time we required which database and what is that application through, whether it is a backend or like thing. So which user has initiated, what is the query, and what is the duration was the query start time, how long it was continuously executing. So that what we will do, we will customizedly have one query. So that query is, so we are just taking the collective information of PID, user and query start, and we are just calculating how much the duration of the query and what is the query, state of the query status and wait event type and wait. So here we have just executed. So compared to the last output, we are just taking that required informations. So the required information will provide that since this query bar that before that we would just got that the start time, based on the start time to right now you can see that how long it was the query, have that duration of the query and what is that status. So all three are active and this was log in the sense it is waiting for that first has to initiate, so that it's showing as a log. And this is that session 2. So 26288, sorry, this is the session of first one. So 26288. Now you are able to see that what exactly running on your database. Now I want to find out, as I mentioned, like the blocking query or the blocking transaction, there is a query called this is that combination of pg lock and pg stat activity. Now I will just paste this one. So you can just verify this output. So this output clearly mention which session is being blocked by another one. So that session ID 26312. So what is the user? Postgres. And what is the statement? This statement is like this also we can see the blocking duration is almost 8 seconds. So this is a 8 seconds 45 milliseconds. So the 8 seconds where these query blocked each other, and which is the root cause of the blocked, which means this is the parent of the query which trying to execute or trying to update the value against that sales table on the particular row. At the same time this one is waiting for that. So which means this blocking PID is our problematic session. So we have to analyze, we have to take this session, and we have to usually what we have to do, we have to provide these details to the dev team. So that dev team would confirms whether this transaction will complete or completed within the duration, or sometimes through that API calls which means abnormally it calls multiple times. So it will cause that blocked each other. So they would give the confirmation whether you can cancel this query or you can just say as it is, but that decision is based upon that how the query performance impacting on your DB. Sometimes it may lead into, due to the high load of blocking sessions, it may increase that CPU and it will increase that concurrent sessions. So that impact is very high on the DB, so that application team will give the green signal to go and kill the session. So it's depend upon the situation. Now we know very well there is two inbuilt functions called pg underscore cancel underscore backend, and another one is pg underscore terminate underscore backend. So what is the differences? So once you have identified there is a problematic query, now that application team has give the confirmation. You want to know whether you are going to kill that particular query itself, or you are going to kill the session and entirely the query process. So that differences we have to understand when you are going to use that pg underscore cancel underscore backend. It will try to kill that particular query only. Still that session would be continue on the DB. But when you are using that pg underscore terminate underscore backend, it will kill the session, or it will reset that entire session and it will kill that particular query. Now we are going to use pg underscore terminate underscore backend of this PID. Now you can provide that. So once you have executed, it will give that response of T terminated. Now you can just verify once again. So to see that, so before that we had a session, and that session were showing like this 26312. I will try to get that here. 26312. See, before it was status was logged and it was active. Once we have killed that previous session, now it was came into that idle transaction. Now this query has to see that session 2. Before that, that next line item was not showing. I will just do the rollback. So once the transaction has been completed, you can just verify with the blocking session. There were no output. How we are following in the real time. So